Hello guys and welcome to FatbossTV. Today we're looking at the new upcoming changes that are coming to the challenge mode system that have recently been made available on testing on the Legion Alpha.
Yes, the challenge mode system is now loosely named Mythic Plus because 1, you now activate challenge modes within the Mythic dungeons, and 2, they kind of haven't come up with a better name for it yet. How this works is that you enter a Mythic dungeon, in this example and for the rest of the video we're in Halls of Valor, and you use a challenger's pedestal that is at the start of the dungeon. When you interact with this pedestal, you are asked to place in a keystone. Now it's unclear exactly where these keystones are from, but as like a wild guess, it's either from completing the normal Mythic dungeon or buying them with some form of currency from a vendor somewhere. On Alpha, fortunately, there is a vendor where you can just simply buy them for gold. Now all keystones currently work the exact same way. You just have one player place it in the pedestal, hit start, and you're off. However, each keystone does have a level, and the higher the level is, the more difficult the instance becomes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
After firing the dungeon off, you get a 10-second countdown, and then you can go and do whatever you want within the instance. Now you'll immediately notice that there is a timer on the side of your screen. If you manage to clear the instance within this set timer, which in our case with Halls of Valor is 45 minutes, the player will get their keystone back, and it appears that it will be upgraded to a higher level depending on how quickly you cleared the dungeon. As an example, in our level 1 challenge mode, we completed it in 40 minutes, which gave us a bronze medal and upgraded our keystone to level 2. If you was to complete the dungeon much quicker than we did and obtained maybe a silver or a gold medal, the keystone would be upgraded to something much higher to try and match your group's capability. So perhaps it would be a level 3 or even a level 4 keystone if you're faster.
Now, if you complete the dungeon at any speed whatsoever, so if you complete it in the bronze, silver, or gold time, or if you don't even complete it within the time limit at all, you're still rewarded with a chest full of loot. However, if you do in fact complete the dungeon over the set time limit, your keystone will become depleted. This effect doesn't lower the keystone level, but it prevents you from getting loot from that difficulty level again using that stone. However, if you was to use someone else's keystone that isn't depleted, then potentially you could just keep running that level. We've yet to be able to test this because loot doesn't exist from these challenge modes just yet. Also, just to add, when the loot is implemented, it doesn't appear that it'll be on a lockout based system whatsoever. It will just be entirely based on the availability of your keystones.
So from our understanding, just to explain it a little bit more clearer, if you was to complete Halls of Valor at level 3 over the time limit for the first time, you will all get loot, and the player who put the keystone in initially will get back his keystone, but it will be depleted. You can use this keystone again, but you won't get any loot at the end of the run. But if you manage to complete the instance within the set time limit using that particular failed keystone, it will then be upgraded to a higher keystone that will grant you loot when you first complete it on whatever level it grants you next. Like Alex said, we're not sure on how other people's keystones work. So for example, if you did clear level 3 with your keystone and then you use someone else's keystone immediately afterwards that is level 3, if you get loot both times, we're not sure, but it does appear that that is the case. Also, the keystone that you receive from finishing the dungeon right now is always for Halls of Valor. However, it was mentioned that this might become randomized to other Mythic Plus dungeons, so we won't really know this until more are available for testing. So how do you clear these challenge modes anyway? Well, it's very similar to how it worked in the past. You just need to make sure you kill all the bosses and clear a certain amount of trash. However, instead of having like a set numerical requirement like it did before, you know, kill 50 mobs, now you just have a progress bar, similar to what you would see in a bonus objective or like a greater rift from Diablo. This progress bar just simply fills up each time you kill a trash mob. However, it appears that the bigger the trash mob is, or the more annoying that trash mob is to deal with, the more percentage you'll gain from that particular mob. So, as an example, if you kill a big roaming champion, you'll gain like 4% towards your bar, but if you kill like a shitty little mob, you'll only get 2%.
And this honestly is great in my opinion because it does allow groups to make decisions on how they wanted to clear the dungeon. Like in challenge modes in the past, you'll just take the path of least resistance, just killing all of the smaller trash mobs rather than the big ones, because why would you want to kill the more challenging trash mobs when they're worth the exact same as that little shitty rat thing in the corner? However, now killing a big mob is worth it. Like, so if your group does excel at single target damage and your AoE damage is maybe a little bit lacking, you can try and devise a route through the dungeon which focuses on more big mobs rather than sets of little mobs. It might not work in every dungeon, but you might be able to do it in some of the larger, more open ones. One thing that I do dislike about this progress bar is that sometimes it's a little bit unclear about how much each mob is worth. Say you're clearing out like a massive set of trash and there's like 5 mobs in there and they're all like different sizes and shit. You're not able to tell which one gave you what percentage unless you're really eyeing up the bar at the same time. One way they could easily fix this is just add a percentage value to each mob in their tooltip, just letting you know how much percent they're worth so you can make a little bit more informed decisions on the fly. Now, another major difference to old challenge modes is that players' gear is not scaled at all. Beforehand, everyone was scaled down to a set item level, however now you can go into the dungeon with your full ridiculous raid gear and just tear this place up in lower difficulties. Now this would get really old really quick, so luckily the higher difficulties do add a lot of challenges for players with higher gear.
So how do the difficulty levels scale? Well, each level that you do simply just adds percentage health and percentage damage dealt to every mob and boss within the dungeon. The higher the level, the higher the percent. Very simple. In Halls of Valor, level 1 was just an 8% increase, 2 was 17, 3 was 26, and 6 was 59. How the percentages are calculated per level we're not completely sure on because we don't have access to all the different types of keystones for all the different levels, but what is clear is that the percentage jump between each level does become pretty damn large. Also on top of these percentages, once you reach level 3, an affix will be applied to the dungeon. This will add an effect on the dungeon that will add an extra layer of challenge and may change the way that you tackle the dungeon completely. Now available at level 3, there is 4 different types. You have Tyrannical, which is just the bosses having even more health and even more damage. You have Bolstering, which makes it so non-boss enemies will buff nearby allies when they die, so that might force you to leave mobs on low health so you can kill them off very quickly. Raging, which makes non-boss enemies enrage at low health, which makes them deal double damage until they are killed. So basically you can't AoE, you have to focus down low health mobs. And Teaming, which basically adds extra mobs to the dungeon, and it also increases the kill count requirement.
So each of these will change how you have to deal with trash and how you have to kill bosses, and you can kind of deal with it. You can understand, okay, that's very simple. However, once you reach level 6, an additional affix will be applied to the dungeon, so you will be dealing with 2 of them at once rather than just the 1. Now the level 6 pool of affixes is different from the level 3 pool of affixes. You got 4 entirely new ones you can deal with. One of these is Necrotic. This makes it so enemies' melee attacks apply a stacking debuff that deals damage and reduces the healing you receive. You got Volcanic, which makes it so enemies cause eruptions of flame beneath the feet of distant players. You've got Skittish, which makes it so tanks generate much less threat. And Decay, which makes it so all players suffer damage over time throughout the entire challenge mode, no matter if you're in combat or you're not in combat. You're just always taking 1% of your health every 2 seconds.
Now when you are on higher levels, such as 6, where you do have multiple affixes together, they do have fixed combinations, and all these combinations are supposed to change on a weekly basis. However, on Alpha, right now they are changing every 12 hours for testing purposes. So as an example, you have Teaming and Skittish together, so this means you're going to have more mobs, but the tanks are going to have less threat.
Which is going to be awful.
So there's going to be all these mobs running around hitting players instead of tanks. You have Raging and Necrotic. This means that the mobs are going to enrage at low health, as well as melee attacks applying a dot. Doesn't seem too bad, that one. Just
no.
Kite.
Pretty much. When they're low health, just kite them about. Like a monk tank or something would be pretty good for that one. You also have Bolstering and Decay. This makes it so the enemies buff allies when they die, and there's a constant dot on the group. These two don't synergize too badly together. However, of course, Decay just always keeps you on your feet because you are always taking ticking damage, and it's not particularly nice. You get Tyrannical and Volcanic. This makes it so the bosses have more health and damage, and it places eruptions underneath players. This sucks a lot. I can imagine this one actually being a little bit of a sneaky bastard, because if you're getting eruptions underneath your feet while in a boss encounter and you're very specifically placed somewhere, boss encounters are a hell of a lot harder. You're taking a shit ton more damage. You've got to do the mechanics perfectly, otherwise you're going to die. Say it all stacked up, and you have to be stacked up, I don't know, say on the God King boss and the last bit of the Halls of Valor, say you need to be stacked up behind the tank because you got that giant shield around you, then he just places fire underneath you. And it's just, do I stand in the fire and die from that, or do I run out and die from the fucking giant Ragnarok he's doing at the exact same time? So that one might be really horrible.
You also have Teaming and Necrotic. This makes it so, you have more mobs, and the melee attacks apply dots. This is going to be absolutely horrible for tanks, so you're probably going to be kiting the entire instance.
Yep.
You have Raging and Volcanic. This is enrage at low health, and again, the eruptions underneath players. This one doesn't seem too much of a problem. Again, it's just single target and move out the eruptions. You have bolstering and skittish. This makes it so mobs are in range when other mobs near them die, as well as the tank having less threat.
This actually might be good.
Yeah, it might actually be helpful.
Because if you can rip threat off the tank, like just as the ad's going to die, so you just like bursts it with damage and it starts walking towards you, you can kill it out the group. You can just kill it out there.
Yeah,
that actually,
maybe.
This might be a good combo you got there. I don't think it will be, but it might be.
And the combination that we saw on level 6 is Tyrannical and Decay. This makes it so the bosses have more HP and deal more damage, as well as having a constant dot on the group. And we can assume, based on what we've seen here with level 3 and level 6, at level 9 there'll probably be even more affixes.
Oh god, imagine if they actually did that. They haven't said if they're going to add another affix every 3 levels, but if they did do that, that sounds amazing fun. Like, that's going to be super, super hard. I doubt you even be able to do the instance over the time limit. I just don't think you even be able to do the place until you got ridiculous gear or with some crazy strategies. But that'll be a really fun thing to experience. But overall, how does it feel? So we managed to clear level 1, level 3, and we did make a couple of really bad attempts at level 6. Now, level 1 pretty much feels the exact same as Heroic or Mythic. The small damage and health increase on mobs is pretty much unnoticeable. It's not really supposed to be. You haven't got any affixes at this point. But as soon as you get into level 3, it was a whole different ballpark. Mainly because of the Tyrannical affix in play. The bosses both having the 26% health and damage increase just from being at level 3, as well as an additional 50% more health and 30% more damage on top of that, made fights way longer and incredibly punishing.
An example of this is Himdall, the very first boss. When he casts his first Horn of Valor, you immediately notice that the entire group is on around 30% health, which, to be honest, isn't too much of an issue by itself.
No.
But when combined by other abilities, such as the almost unavoidable blades that he throws out, you can so easily be comboed on this encounter. With a less than optimal setup, it took us a really long time to get this guy down, because we were basically relying on the perfect pull, where we didn't get, like, any overlaps, because pretty much all our issues stem from that overlap, where it was a blade and a horn. With a far more optimal setup, which was basically a group that had significantly higher DPS, as well as having class abilities to either like negate or completely dodge the damage from the blade, it was far easier. The encounter still, of course, has the lightning breath from the drakes that come past, and if you did get hit by them, it did almost one-shot you, as well as the lightning that is from the heroic mode. They almost one-shot you as well, but fortunately both of those abilities, if you're playing properly, can be completely avoided.
However, the boss does sometimes like to throw out blades at you while you're trying to dodge it. And like, if you're close to the boss, you have like the blade just travels so quickly. If you haven't got a blink, it's likely you're going to get hit. And when you're hit by it, it can knock you back into the lightning. It's so very brutal, and that also extends to the frontal cone bleed on the tank. It's so nasty. Like, without a cooldown, the ticks would just bring you from full health to almost dead, and of course, that forces your healer to heal you, which makes it so the healer can't really top up the rest of the group in time for the next Horn of Valor coming in. It's really brutal. Like, this first encounter, it took us a long old time before we even got him anywhere near dead.
But after a good pull where we didn't have any major issues with the blade, we did then move on. We moved towards Fenrir. This encounter felt almost exactly the same. You just noticed the damage increase as well as obviously the health increase. The boss's like bleed stacks on the group were going up pretty damn high. It felt like if you get to 4 stacks, your group is pretty much going to wipe very soon. The damage that's going out is almost close to unhealable. Of course, I was playing the Resto Druid that didn't have full artifact, which probably didn't help that much. But I'd say the average group, if you go to 4 or 5 stacks, you're probably going to wipe. But in our case, with like a really good pull with really strong DPS, we killed the boss before the 4th stacks, and it wasn't particularly difficult. But when we moved over towards Harajar, this is when we noticed like how broken level 3 actually is.
Yeah, at the moment, oh god, with a less than optimal setup, let's just say we called it quits so damn quickly. It was like, oh, we're just instantly dying from mechanics. Right, okay, we'll call it there. Because like with the less optimal group, it took us about 45 minutes to kill the first boss, and we were not ready to spend another like 2 hours on this one. Basically, the stacks on the boss on either side go up pretty fucking fast, and the stacks are removed slowly when the boss moves from one side to the other, just like in Heroic. However, when the boss has like even 2 or 3 stacks from the light side, the Expel Light, which is the debuff that explodes after a few seconds and jumps to a new target, that just one-shots you, because of the combination of the boss getting a damage increase from the stacks, as well as Tyrannical, as well as having 26% extra damage anyway. It just does more than your health pool, just flat out. Because of this, we just brought 2 hunters and a mage. Not only did they do a ridiculous amount of damage right now, but they can try and survive with things like you got turtle and you got ice blocks, you got invis. You just want to try and stay alive through this mechanic, because if it did go on you and you had nothing, you would just flat out die. There's no way of stopping it. You could try, like, I don't know, have an external cooldown, but you can't have that 3 times in a fucking row. It was so brutal. So you could say, just tank it on the left-hand side. You could just stay in the lightning phase the entire time. Well, you do want to stay in the lightning phase as much as possible. However, when the boss has like 7 or 8 stacks and does an arcing bolt, that pretty much one-shots you as well. So you can't stay in the lightning phase the entire time. You do have to drag it over to the light phase, so the lightning phase stacks will drop, and then quickly rush it back over before any expel lights go out and you all horribly die. Pretty much when we was doing this boss, it was all about RNG, really. Like, where did the debuffs go? Did that player happen to have a cooldown? Like, at one point, I had an expel light on me, I managed to turtle it, and a really strong arcing bolt came out just afterwards, and it just happened to go on me. If that went on someone else, it was most likely going to kill them. If I didn't have a cooldown, I probably would have taken about 4 million damage within about 5 seconds. I have like a 2 mil health pool with what they've given us. So it's absolutely crazy. One really funny thing about this though, the most impactful abilities of the boss, you know, like the attenuation of light as well as the eye of the storm, they're the easiest things to deal with.
They do fuck all.
Yeah, as long as you
avoid them or out healer.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you avoid the attenuation, because it like does AoE damage if you're hit by any of them now, which sucks. Like, it really sucks for your healer because they're already hating the entire game at this point. As long as you can move from that, they're super easy to deal with. It's just the unavoidable things that one-shot you, which is pretty fucking cruel.
And we did kill this guy off. I mean, we just had a pool where, I mean, we had quite a lot of low percentage wipes.
Yeah.
And every single time those wipes were simply no cooldown left on that player to reduce the damage from the expel light. And that was literally that every single time.
Yeah.
But when we finally did get the pool, you know, it was fun.
I really enjoyed it.
That was actually really fun, but I don't think they'll release the boss like that.
No, definitely
They're
not.
definitely tuned down that ability. I don't think they expect you to go in and just get the RNG cheese pool, because you'll never clear this place in 45 minutes if that's the case. Maybe on really high levels they kind of expect that shit.
Maybe.
But yeah, not on level 3, I don't think.
Yeah.
But anyway, we killed that guy off, and then we moved through the rest of the instance. And to be honest, the very last 2 bosses, they felt well-tuned, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't think they really have any mechanics that are sort of really that scary to deal with. There's a couple of bursty moments we do take quite a lot of damage, like the Fellblaze Rush on
the God King, yeah.
Yeah, on the God King. But really, it was super easy to deal with. It was just like, did you do Heroic before? And you know how to deal with those mechanics? Okay, you'll be absolutely fine. Nothing's going to one-shot you. So we killed those 2 off, and that was it. And it was at this point that we then decided to go back and try level 6.
We didn't make it past the first boss.
Yeah, so level 6 has been cleared, but just to give you guys an idea of how level 6 is, for people to clear it, they used 4 tanks and 1 healer, and it took them like 5 hours to do it.
Yeah, of course, this is not going to be the case on live. At the moment, they are scaling your gear. Like we said that you're not scaled in these dungeons. You won't be on live, but they are scaling your gear to a set item level just for testing purposes, and that item level is just not high enough for you to deal with level 6.
Well, like Himdall as an example, when he does the Horn of Valor, you go 10% health.
Yeah, exactly. And
instantly 10% health.
And at the moment you have a Tyrannical and Decay, so you go to 10% health, and then you're taking that ticking damage every 1 second. Like, you need to have all the tanks. Like, I couldn't imagine of doing it any other way, actually. When I was like, no one could do 6, and then I was like, oh, a group actually did it. 4 tanks, 1 healer. Like, that's the only way you can clear it at the moment, which is crazy, but overall, people are clearing level 3 within the 45-minute timer. Quite a few people have managed to do it. It is very difficult, and it does require multiple attempts, which I think is a really awesome thing, because I love very hard content. Like, at the moment, it feels like you're trying to beat impossible bosses. Like, they've accidentally released these, and they're just way too difficult, and it's like, but no, we can find a way. One more pull, we'll try it this one more new way, and we can just try and cheese our way through these fights. And although that's not what is supposed to be, the challenge modes, it's still incredibly fun.
Yeah, a lot of the comments on the feedback post, a lot of people just said, this is the most fun I've had in this game in a long time. And I kind of felt the same.
Yeah.
Even as a healer, and it was incredibly fucking stressful. The entire group is on low health, including the tank, and all you can do is just spam the tank, spam the tank, spam. You're just constantly throwing all these heals, and it's like another, I'm like, the horn's going to come in 10 seconds. I cannot top you all. You're all dead.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like,
and like
okay.
even on Fenrir, like if you got kited, so you had to run away when the boss focused on you, we would all drop so low. And then like as a hunter, you got exhilaration, which heals yourself. And if you get killing blows, it's like off cooldown quicker. And I'm like, I know what I need to do. And I'll be like saving up my damage and setting it up properly. So I try and steal killing blows so I can self-heal and survive. Like you're using everything that you've got to try and take down these bosses. And it's incredibly fun. And hopefully they do keep an aspect of that, especially at higher difficulties.
Yeah.
Of course, higher and higher difficulties will become easier and easier throughout the expansion.
Eventually, of course, it will get to a point where it becomes impossible.
It has to. If it keeps scaling forever, it has to become impossible. It will just become
impossible. But when it gets very close to impossible, but it isn't, that's where you're going to see some really crazy strats.
Well, you might even see just dedicated 5-man groups from like some of the top raiding guilds. Once they've cleared the raiding content, they'll just be going into these Mythic 5-mans in these new Mythic Plus challenge modes and just seeing how far they can push it with the very best gear possible, with the most cheese they can muster all at once, just to see how far they can go. And it'll be like an extra little raid race going on the side.
Yeah.
It'll just like, who's managed to do level 108 now or whatever.
And it's going to be relevant throughout the entire expansion because as a new patch comes out and new gear comes in, which of course is going to be a higher item level, that unlocks higher levels within the challenge modes as well. Yeah, exactly. Which potentially even unlocks even more affixes.
Oh, God.
So
you can have 20 of them all at once, and they're all decay. You lose 20% of your max health every 2 seconds. There you go.
It's going to be crazy. But thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this little preview, then please do drop us down a like. It helps us out a lot, and we shall see you in the next video.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.